Happen in 2 years for $2 million versus 10 years for $10 million. For the state or, oh, for the city, yeah. Oh, the state is billions. Yeah. We ready?
Also, we might be live, so.
Oh, yeah, for that, yes. For our, I wanted to come again.
Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. If we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Krushat.
Here.
Let the record show that Commissioner Mendoza has an excused absence. Commissioner Walker.
Here.
Vice Chair Dixon.
Here.
Chair Paulahana.
Here. These announcements, okay, so the proceedings may be viewed on demand at the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going on the city website and clicking on the meeting agendas link. This is a time for public comments, so if you the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on the agenda, all comments are to be directed to the chair of the Commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. There is a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you haven't already done so, please fill out your name and address slips and please hand them to the Planning Commissioner Secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by the Brown Act, state law, from taking action or discussing at length items not included on the printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until and considered for that item on the agenda. Commission comments and reports of meetings attended. Mr. Krushat. Oh, sorry. Maybe I should. I didn't have any yellow slips, but let me go ahead and open it up if there's any public comments. Okay, closing public comments. Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Keeping me on track. Okay, now, Mr. Krushat, your comments are reported.
I attended the last city council meeting where they approved amendments to the vacation home rental ordinance. Made a short talk. Got a lot of what we wanted, had some surprises, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you, Max.
I haven't attended any meetings since our last meeting.
Thank you. Jason?
I had not attended meetings as well.
I don't think I've been back to a meeting since we did our Planning Commissioner Academy, but that was very insightful. We learned a lot over those couple of days, and I really appreciate the city investing in us so that we can, reinvest back into the city. So, moving on to consent calendar, we have none. Items removed from the consent calendar for discussion, we have none. We do not have any public hearings today, so there's none. Discussion for potential action items, none. We will be moving our Community Development Director updates till after our study session. And what we're all here for, let's move right into our study session.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'm just back from a housing conference last week, so some new information to share, but then a lot of stuff that you've also heard before. Before we get started, I just wanted to kind of remind you of the Arena Allocation. Arena is one of those awkward acronyms that stands for Regional Housing Needs Allocation. So this is an allocation the state of California assigns to every community, every incorporated city, every county for a housing unit development target over an 8-year period. It coincides with the housing element update. So the state has kind of a top number. It flows through the regional COGS, and then the COGS then turn around and make allocations to the various communities. So for our 8-year period, our Arena period, there's a total of 1,047 units. That's the target. That works out to 130 units per year. And just by comparison, we had 18 homes permitted last year, so well below the target. Although this year we've already permitted 19 homes, so definitely running better than last year, but well below 130 the state would like us to produce. Of those, 358 affordable targets, and it's all based on area median family income, defining affordability. In our case, $75,300 for a 4-person household is median income. So our Arena allocation breaks down like so. We have 11% extremely low income. That's 30% of area median income. 11% very low. That's 30 to 50% area median income, and then low at 12%, 51 to 80%, and then moderate and above moderate. So the city's efforts are really concentrated in the low to extremely low income brackets. That's obviously where we can affect the most change, with the private sector handling a lot of the rest. So one of the problems that we're facing in every community, not just in California, but throughout the whole country, is the private sector itself is not creating this type of housing. And so it's falling upon cities and counties, regional agencies to sort of pick up the slack and help produce housing. We're not a development company. We don't have, contractors that go out and build housing, so it's a new arena for municipalities to enter into. Some of the counties have more experience, especially San Bernardino County, because they have a housing authority, a full-blown housing authority. But some of the challenges for producing affordable housing is, there are many. One is the cost of new housing, labor and materials. We've all heard about the supply chain issues, and those continue to affect us. Some of the projects we're bidding out obviously are coming in higher than original estimates, because we're seeing things like concrete go up in price, lumber, of course. I have, my personal feeling is that materials shortage is going to correct itself, that eventually we'll get to a point of supply and demand. What I'm more concerned about is labor. We have shortage of labor for a number of factors. One, we have a lot of baby boomers that are retiring, especially over the next 10 years. Many of them have those construction trades. We don't have enough young people coming in to learn the construction trades. You factor in other things like dropping fertility rates and immigration and all that. It's going to be a very tight labor market for the foreseeable future. Another cost thing that's driving up cost is CEQA and tribal negotiations. All well intended, CEQA was kind of intended to help, protect the environment. A lot of times what's happened is it's been weaponized, for not in my backyard type of opposition. And so we haven't seen that here in the city, but I know some other cities that definitely experience that. California building code requirements, again, sort of all good ideas. New houses must have solar, fire sprinklers, Title 24, the energy, but all of those add costs to a housing unit, and it's been estimated that it's at least $30,000 in extra housing costs, and probably more like 40. The big one is a lack of public sewer. You're not going to build affordable housing on 2.5 acre new minimum lot size. No developer is going to do that. Typically, affordable housing is the starter home. It's like a 1,200 square foot starter home, and those are on 1/4 acre lots or less. So you want to go higher density, that requires a package treatment plant. which we have included in this proposal. That helps tie us over, but that's not a long-term sustainable solution. You know, if the city's going to make a dent in affordable housing, it needs public sewer, at least in the core. Impact fees, city has roads and schools. Our fees are actually relatively low to some other communities. We just have one roads, and we're looking at kind of modifying that city council from fees in lieu of to a straight impact fee, so that the impact, at least for large lots, is not as great. And then financing. So any affordable housing project or any housing project typically has a construction loan and a permanent loan. They're usually two different sources. Financing has been good, but interest rates are starting to tick back up. So it might be difficult, especially on the construction loan side, to get financing. So what all this adds up to is affordable housing requires government subsidy. That's kind of the direction of the state that we're in now. So what are those potential subsidies? One is the city contribution, and usually the best thing that a city can bring is land. Usually have land that can be developed for housing, and then other in-kind. So in-kind would be like my time working on the project. A city could forgive fees, and it could also provide some of the infrastructure. A lot of affordable housing projects, especially those geared towards very low, extremely low income, have housing vouchers that are a component of it. So this is a voucher, you know, like a Section 8 voucher that you might get from a housing authority to help offset the cost of rent. Another funding source for developers are tax-exempt bonds. There's two types. There's a 4% and a 9%. Come from the federal government. Also, the state also provides some tax relief as well. Obviously, the 9% are more coveted, and that's typically what most developers like to pursue. That window opens twice a year. And then grants and loans. So we are fortunate here in California that the state is putting a lot of money into affordable housing in both grants and loans. But likewise, it's also very competitive. So one thing I learned from the conference last week is the last cycle they had $2 billion in requests, and they had $200 million in funding. So it's a lot like the Prop 68 park bond competition. You know, about 10% of the projects are funded. That depends on the program. There's probably likely going to be some federal housing grants and loans as well, coming through either through the infrastructure or through another separate bill. So the ones that is kind of most appealing to us is the infill infrastructure grant. That's an outright grant and will help defray cost of the infrastructure for the project. Another one that's very appealing is the Veterans Home Housing and Homeless Prevention Loan Program, VHIP. A little bit more difficult for us because we're far away from resources that are needed to support residents, especially a VA hospital, and some of the other supportive services that this loan requires. Not impossible, but more difficult to be competitive in that program. So some of the city's previous efforts in 2021, I believe, we were awarded a home key grant. That's a $700,000 grant that allowed for the purchase and renovation of a quadplex on Elm Avenue. This was to establish permanent housing and aimed at homeless and near homeless, and also targeted very low income. Most of the residents will have vouchers to help, defer the cost. And I did want to mention that the city was awarded 4 VASH housers. That's Veterans Assisted Supported Housing. So we do have those 4 vouchers. A lot of acronyms in the affordable housing program. So if I mention one and it's not clear, let me know. So when we were looking at different sites, of course, we looked at, kind of the core downtown, but also other places downtown. Other places where we have infrastructure, other places that would score well in a grant competition that looks at the various amenities that a particular site could offer, and we didn't have to look very far because we have the 3.5 acre site just directly next to City Hall. So we could carve out a 3.5 acre parcel. This would require a lot line adjustment to create. And that's a whole lot larger than the 1.7 acre site that we were looking downtown. So twice the area. Zoning being in place with the downtown specific plan, so that would be is going to be zone DR20, 20 units per acre, and that's a minimum that you need to even submit an application for IIG, and then plus you get an affordable housing density bonus. Height limit at 45, maximum stories at 3 stories. The maximum floor area ratio, that's a planning acronym, is 1.0. And then setbacks, 10 front, 10 side, and interior 5. As mentioned, almost all multifamily is eligible for affordable housing density bonus. That bonus actually increases as a greater percentage of the units are reserved for the lower income. So, you know, if you've got a lot of extremely low, very low, then that bonus is going to go higher than if you simply had a mixed-use project where half was market and half was low. So the bonus is due parking requirements as well, and ideally you're near a bus stop, which we do have one right outdoor here. So this is an aerial of the property that we're looking at. Just to orientate you, it is along Civic Center Drive and Smoke Tree Avenue. To the east is the City Hall building. This is the finance building down below. To the east is also Veterans Park. And then we have the library. Off the map is County Social Services. There's already a multifamily project directly north. And to the east and south, we have single-family residential, but also a little bit of commercial area here as well. So what's nice about this site and what helps it score well is it is close to services. So within a short walking distance, and you don't even have to cross a road, you have the San Bernardino County Social Services. This local office offers transitional assistance, including to those homeless. The library, City Hall and Sheriff's Department, and Veterans Park. So having a nice park nearby housing is always a great thing. And then, of course, a bus stop. Some other nearby amenities include the links to the high school and elementary school on El Paseo. And the city has another project in the works. We're probably about 90% design. And that's the Safe Route to Schools project on El Paseo, which will improve that pedestrian connectivity to those schools. Also, Morongo Basin Community Health Service is nearby, and I think I read an article that they were combining their different operations into the buildings there on Split Rock Avenue. Also close to downtown employment opportunities, and then what will be a new amenity is the Channel Trail, and that actually provides that linkage between Adobe Road and Split Rock. So what the IIG grant would help us pay for is street improvements, the frontage improvements that every project has to do. That's curb, gutter, and sidewalk along Smoke Tree Avenue and Civic Center Drive. As part of the downtown plan, we looked at that pedestrian linkage from El Paseo Drive to Veterans Park. There's actually a pedestrian crossing out here on Adobe Road that helps facilitate that pedestrian movement. Package treatment plant, again, because we're unsewered, and then on-site infrastructure. So this is kind of a new one for us, and that this grant will pay for the on-site infrastructure. So that includes the parking, the curbs, gutter, all of that type of improvements needed on site. We're still getting clarification on other things like, well, will it cover landscaping? Will it cover a tot lot? That type of thing. So we'll get those answers soon. So right now what we have is a proposed unit mix. And I will just say right now this is a proposed unit mix. It could change depending on how things work out. But the unit mix is proposed at 100 total units, and 100% of them would be affordable. So no market rates units at all. And the target is to low, very low, and extremely low incomes. And again, that mix is being determined. One of the things that we have to submit to the state is a market study to validate the market in each one of those income categories. Also, it would be include both senior and family housing facilities. You know, when we were looking at downtown, we were just looking at senior. Generally, the more inclusive the housing project is, the better you score. We will probably have to submit these as two separate projects based on the definitions from the federal government and rules from the state. So it might be two separate projects, but it's one overall development project. As I mentioned, there is the potential for veterans housing incorporated at least through the vouchers, but getting that supported plan together would be a critical step in making that happen. And then we also looked at a project that could be built in phases. So right now, that's kind of how it's breaking down. On the senior housing side, we're looking at one 3-story building with an elevator. That would provide 40 one-bedroom units. It would include a leasing office and then amenities. So indoors, a club room with kitchen, restrooms, laundry room, and a computer area. And then outside, patio seating and a barbecue area. It would include parking, and typically with senior projects, that parking is gated for security purposes. The family housing would include three-story walk-up buildings, and it would have a mix of bedroom types. So right now, it's broken down as 16 one-bedroom units, 24 two-bedroom units, and 23 bedroom units. Another thing that helps you score better is having some of the units with larger bedrooms, so you can, you know, be able to provide housing for families. There would also be a one-story building for the leasing office, but also, you know, the club room with kitchen, restrooms, laundry room, and computer area. Also outside, patio seating, barbecue area, and a tot lot. And it would have the standard parking. So those are kind of the two components of the project. I'll start with this image, but then I'll bring up the PDF so we can zoom in, but just sort of to give you the overall layout of things. So the way the site is being laid out is there would be an entrance off of Civic Center Drive, but also Smoke Tree Avenue. So two entrances. This is to meet the county fire department requirement of having two entrances for multifamily projects of this size. In the northeast corner would be the senior project with the leasing office and amenities sort of built into the building on the first floor, and then the gated parking nearby with the outdoor area barbecue here in this kind of little courtyard. The family housing would be composed of the three-story walk-up buildings, so two larger ones and one smaller, with the amenity building here in the center, and next to it, the tot lot. And we've allocated space for the package treatment plant and the stormwater management as well. So need to do a little bit more engineering to make sure we've got, you know, enough room for that. You will see the 30-foot wide drive aisles. This is another county fire department requirement that you go 3 stories. Then you have to increase the width of the drive aisles. So let me just kind of zoom in to the PDF so you can get kind of a sense of, you know, kind of the layout of the buildings. Pretty standard sort of apartment style layout. You know, for example, a senior would have the leasing office here on the ground floor, like on the front of the building, the amenities in back, the different one-bedroom units throughout with an elevator there in the center. And then the family housing, similar, but instead of an elevator, these would be walk-up buildings. Of course, we have our trash enclosure required, and then 2 of the larger buildings here as well. So that's kind of how the site plan is shaping out right now. Like I say, it could change. We're tweaking it, reaching out to different agencies that we need to coordinate with, but we're trying to get to a point where we have a site plan that we can submit to the state along with a grant application. So sort of the next steps, and we're on a very fast time frame here, is we have a pre-application meeting with Housing Community Development next week. So we went through kind of a pre-qualifying round and made it through that round. Our next meeting is discuss in detail our plans with the site plan, what we would like to do, the different programs that we're looking to pursue, and get feedback from them. Then we would revise the site plan, and we're going to bring it back to you for site plan and design approval. We're in the process now of creating the lot, and then also preparing the cost estimates that would be part of the grant application. The market analysis is underway, and then once we have all of that, we need to put it in a pro forma. And just to basically describe that is, the spreadsheet to see if the project pencils out. Do you have enough of the funding in place? Do you have enough income coming in for management and maintenance over the period of the loan, if it's the bond period, and then submit an application. So we're hard at work on all these steps. And I'll just say this, we have a June 28 deadline coming up for a submission. If we do not make it in that round, then there's another one that we hear for IIG coming up in the fall, probably around November. And then we would not make that, we would submit again, next year. So each year, we're going to have this big funding from the state. And it's probably going to be augmented because, as you all know, the state is running a pretty good surplus now. So they could come back and add more funds to these various programs. And having an application in place, helps us immensely if additional funding becomes available. So just to, reiterate some of the comments we made when we were talking about the housing element, is, the state has mandated we remove all discretionary approvals for multifamily and senior housing. So that's administrative use permits at the staff level or conditional use permit at the planning commission level. If the project meets the requirements, we must approve. However, the city can still impose reasonable requirements through the site plan and design approval process. So, for example, one that's a common condition is our landscaping be drought tolerant, low water use. Another one that we've been applying to all the commercial projects we've approved is lighting that's dark sky certified. So things like that are reasonable conditions. But we can't come back and say, I don't like it, don't think it belongs here, whatever. We would face the wrath of the state if we did. And then all engineering and building codes still apply. So that's where we're at in the process. We can, with this particular project, we continue to look at other opportunities. We continue to talk with developers on in the private sector about opportunities. Another one of the challenges that we face is a lot of the track maps that were approved back in the 2008, before the go-go housing boom that the city had. A lot of those are nearing their life expectancy. And the clock is ticking on many of them. So, you know, we approve the initial track map at 3 years, and then we grant the full extensions at 6. The state also added another 7 years during the recession. We call them the recession extensions, so that's 16 years. So many of them are, you know, reaching that. Now, the state recently added what we call the COVID extension of 18 months. But even still, some of them still don't have, you know, a lifeline beyond that. So if we don't get another state extension, then some of them have already expired, and some of them will be expiring in next year or so. But there are some track maps that are still alive. They all still have the challenge of how do you provide sewage to them. Each one has to create its own package treatment plant. Each one is going to have to go through that expense. So, and right now, to go through a track map these days with, you know, all the challenges that I mentioned, including CEQA, and a lot of developers, quite frankly, just shy away from that now. So, but there are some that are still out there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you would have.
Travis, did you have, okay, we're talking about affordable housing. In your analysis or in your market survey, have you come up with what is the target we're shooting for like a 3-bedroom? Is it 800, 900 a month? Is there anything done in that kind of analysis?
That's what the market analysis would tell us. So
Okay.
it's not going to look
But
at
you haven't, okay,
just the county AMI, but it's going to look at what people are paying,
yeah.
you know, locally in the market for rent. as
I mean,
well.
for our area, do we have an idea of what we would want to shoot for?
I don't at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. And the rent, like I said, a lot of times is going to be driven by the subsidies that are added. So, you know, this infill infrastructure grant is kind of a boom in that typically a project like this would have to pay for the housing as well as the site improvements. So if those site improvements are removed from the cost of the overall housing project, then it makes, you know, constructing the housing components a lot easier on just the grant itself. So hopefully that translates into lower rents. So it's all a big, huge spreadsheet exercise, as you
Yeah,
can
I
imagine.
understand.
I can show you the spreadsheet if you'd like,
Yes, I would love it.
to see if it pencils out.
Do we have again, you're saying that we don't have any, a developer in mind right now?
No, we do. We
Okay,
do.
we
So
do.
Milestone is entered into
Okay.
exclusive negotiation agreement with the
Okay.
state. And Milestone has 5 projects now, 4 of which are currently under construction. So they know the grant process. They've been successful. They recently won another grant program we were looking at, the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities, which is kind of like IIG, but it's a little bit different because it's cap and trade dollars, so it's focused more on greenhouse gas reductions than necessarily housing. But they recently won one of those in the Central Valley.
I guess what I'm going for is we're not looking at several. If we go with them, we stay with them.
Yeah, at this point, that's correct. For this project.
Yes.
Now, we do other projects, we could open up at the RFQ again and bring on different developers.
Do you have any questions? Jason? So in the penciling to make it work out, you said management and maintenance costs, so that's like projected care of the building for how long, and plus like staffing it and,
Right.
and manage, oh, okay.
Right, staffing, all the amenities.
And those would be city employees?
No.
Or it would be like you hire a management company that,
Exactly.
oh, okay, got it, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is rough draft number 1. You said you're still working with like design, or is this pretty much what we're running
no,
with?
this is 4.
Well, yeah,
And I think I showed you some of the previous
We did see-
ones.
yeah.
But we looked at the unit count based on some of the information of the grants. We also increased the number of units because there's a density threshold that's established before we even are competitive. So it changed a little bit, but this is generally the layout that we're working with. But we want your comments. If you have any now, is the time to provide those.
What about covered parking? Have you considered that?
We have.
It gets hot, you know.
I know, it does. And that's something we're going to be talking with the architect about on Thursday. And again, will IIG include that
Okay.
in the cost? And I think part of the answer might be yes, if we put solar on top of it.
That's
So
right.
that's a very good point, and one that we'll be bringing up.
Do we need to put solar on it regardless if it's on the covered parking or not?
We do have to do solar on the multifamily housing, yeah.
Anybody else? I got one more question. And then
Sure.
Okay. I know that Project Phoenix funds, we had to have like 1.75 million. I'm not sure of the exact figure or what the final figure was. Had to go to affordable housing.
That's correct.
And that's what that money,
We would
we're
be,
taking, we would be using Project Phoenix money that was designated for affordable housing project on this project.
that's correct.
Okay.
Right. Now, how we do that, we would need to work out with council, how they want to assist the developer. It could be like, for example, forgiveness of fee would be one. The land cost, I think, typically what you do is, a ground lease at $1 a year type of thing. So those are all things that we, still working out. But yeah, the bond issue for affordable housing, that's for the overall redevelopment bond. So it could be done anywhere, didn't have to be done in Project Phoenix. I think one of the original plans was renovating some of the affordable housing that was on Split Rock that the county owns. So there were several ideas that were thrown out.
So if we wanted to put more, could we do a parking garage?
You could, but you're getting into structured parking, and that really, really increases the cost. Yeah,
I do understand this.
yeah.
But just if there was like and the need for more in this particular area.
Yeah, that probably would not pencil out. The structured parking in the desert is just hard to pull
Well,
off.
yeah. You minimize your ability. You'd only have one building for solar, not the whole area for solar. I don't think I have any other questions or something for you to take back to try to rediscover or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
So when I bring it back to you, obviously we'll have the site plan. I definitely want to have the elevations of the structures and a landscaping plan. So that's what we're shooting for. So that's more than the state requires for the grant, but that's typically what you require as part of the site plan and design approval process. So we want to get it as fully formed as possible.
is part of the whole like penciling it in is having like bids from management companies? Like in there, like, hey, okay, if you're going to build this and this is what you're working with landscape wise, this would be my projected annual income to manage this, to take care of it, 5-year plans, all that kind of stuff.
Usually the developer has a management company in mind
Okay.
and knows what their costs are up front, because they
Oh.
have to enter that into the pro forma.
Okay, so that's something the developer would kind of include in their
Yeah.
bid. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering how those kind of all fit in.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
These projects are complicated. There are a lot of pieces to them.
And for Jason's sake, I have no further questions.
Okay. All right. Do you want to open it up to the public?
Alrighty, so go ahead and open it up for public comment. And if you do have a slip, please fill that out and bring it to Miss Shelley. Seeing that I don't have anybody, everybody sure? All right, I'll go ahead and close. So we'll move on, I guess, to our favorite part. No, our community development director updates.
Well, I will be quick so Jason can make his game here.
Awards.
Awards. Oh, so even more.
Yes, even more prestigious, so.
Yeah, I'll be even quicker. So you probably heard by now that council had the public hearing on the vacation home rental or changes to the ordinance. A lot of what was done by the committee and the planning commission is in the final ordinance, but there were 3 things that were changed. One is overall hard cap of 500 VHRs within the city, and that is for a period until 2030 when the next census comes out and would be reviewed. The other thing that was changed was a 5-unit cap of VHRs that a person or entity could own. So this was kind of aimed at, eliminating kind of corporations that were looking into buying up a lot of houses and turn them into VHRs. One planning commission recommendation, the 2-night minimum stay was rejected by council. They wanted to reduce it to 1-night stay. And we made that consistent, with the, because it is now required that you have at least renting your VHR 1 day, 1 night a year. So those two things are consistent. So those are the changes. It goes back to council for second reading. As you all know, ordinance has a second reading. If no changes are made then it's effective in 30 days. We're still under the old regulations. So, if perchance we do, we would have to process those. But we would not be able to accept any more on the effective date. Yeah.
And what are we at now?
We are at 399, so that's a combination of both pending and approved.
Okay.
Some
Wow.
of those drop out,
Yeah.
but obviously we're going to see how how this ordinance change affects the submittals.
Are you getting calls from people that are in escrow right now?
Lots.
And then is there a map where someone can go on and see all the VHRs within the city?
I don't know on the city's website, but it's still on host compliance. So host compliance is our monitoring company for, complaints and things like that.
Okay, so it pops up all the,
Yeah, although the host compliance doesn't show the pending, applications, it only shows the permitted.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that brings
It
up,
will show some that are non-compliant.
if you
Absolutely, 'cause
if you
that's
have
what
over
we're
100 applications before the new ordinance comes into effect, you just stop. If there are 560 licenses being processed before the new ordinance goes into effect, you still have to process those 560.
It's my understanding.
City council has to figure out how to do non-conformance for the 60.
Right, because we're still under the old code,
Gotcha.
okay, until the new code goes into effect. Okay, now, it would be a city council policy to decide, okay, well, as they, attrition, people drop out, they just don't get replaced if we're over the 500 number. Okay, other things that are happening in the city besides VHRs. Believe it or not, there are. Obviously, you see progress on the new construction, so things are going well with the O'Reillys moving forward. Grocery outlets making great progress. Today, they're actually submitted their lot line adjustment, so they are creating an out parcel next to them. I don't know. A lot of people have made comments, well, that seems like a lot of grading for a grocery outlet. Well, they're basically grading portions of the out parcel site as well as part of that, and creating this internal service road that would serve it. New projects lined up. There is, I mentioned before, I think the Taco Bell. That's on the out parcel by O'Reilly's. So Larea and 62, they've gone through the process. And so they'll be coming before you in June. Also, the Choya laundromat is getting near completion as well. We're just waiting on one set of revisions for them, and hopefully that will be in June as well. So those two projects. On the infrastructure side, lots happening there. Channel Trail bids are due next week. So we got our final permit from the flood control. We thought we had our final permit, but there's apparently a final permit that we got just this morning. So we're all set up for that. And then also due next week is the Lucky Park pool as well. Some of the other road projects that are in the work, I mentioned already El Paseo Drive, which is the safe routes to school, to the high school and elementary school there. We have the improvements to the unsignalized intersections. So these are intersections like Utah and Amboy that do not have a stoplight. They do not meet the warrants for the stoplight, but there's still some, serious concerns about those intersections. So things like flashing beacons and better striping and all of that, as well as the neighborhood safety projects too. So those are all moving forward. And the big one that we're really under the gun on the timeline is the median island there at, in front of Stater Brothers and Grocery Outlet. So that needs to be in place before Grocery Outlet can open its entrance off of 62.
Is Caltrans like tracking and they're scheduling?
It's difficult. That one, thank God, is moving forward because it's an encroachment. But things in planning side of Caltrans, it's really bad. I'll just be upfront with you. I'm just getting automated messages now from people I'm not even getting. So in the case of some of these applications, for example, Taco Bell, those entrances were already set. Caltrans already approved them. I don't know what else Caltrans could want,
Right.
in a project like that. So we're going to move forward, and we'll just condition that you got to get your Caltrans encroachment permit. Same for any other project that falls within that category. Because, the applicants have done their due diligence and submitted the scope for the traffic study in January. And here we are, May, and they haven't heard from Caltrans. So there's some real issues there.
Yeah, maybe that they're wrapping up the Morongo stuff. They can look at other things.
It's a different, You have planning, you have encroachments, you have construction, so they're all different.
Oh, good. So maybe there's a chance.
And that's it. That's my report.
I'm sorry, I don't want to hold this meeting up anymore, but I get questions. I remember 2.5 years ago, we approved a CUP for the Nano Brewery on Adobe Road.
Oh, the Joshua Tree.
On that. And the other one I'd ask is how are we doing on the shipping container motel?
Okay. Joshua Tree Brewery. I believe, I know their trash enclosure needed to be built. I think,
They got a permit for the trash enclosure. I don't know what the status of that is.
right.
I saw a sign on there.
Yeah,
before, but never seen the actual.
yeah. They haven't seemed like in a big hurry, and it's not on us.
A lot of projects, we approve the CUPs and,
Then
Right,
it's on them.
funding issue.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that hasn't been on us.
Somebody asked me about
Yeah. Wander Hotel, they have submitted their street improvement plans. They're under review now. Don't have building plans yet for them. They will require a tentative parcel map to essentially abandon one of those streets, as well as dedicate right-of-way to the city for the bordering streets. So that will be coming to the city council. But street improvement plans are what we have today. Right.
Alrighty. Any other
Okay.
questions for Mr. Travis Clark? No? Okay, then this meeting is adjourned.
All right. Thank you much. Okay. Yep. What's that?